Tom Tugendhat for the government this morning, Security Minister. Good to see you.
Morning, Kay. How are you?
On the programme. I am very well indeed, thank you. Let's start with what's going on at home. MI5 are warning that we need to be on high alert. What can you tell us?
Well, you'll appreciate there's very little I can tell you in detail on what MI5 does, but we stay in very close touch. As you can imagine, I've been speaking to MI5 officers only yesterday about the kind of work that we're conducting across the United Kingdom to make sure that we're as aware as possible of any potential threats to the UK. Ken McCallum, the head of MI5, as you know, was talking in San Francisco only the other day, and he highlighted some of the division that could lead to an increase in threat inside the UK. So he's been working very closely with officers around the whole country, but also with partners around the world.
Well, let me put it a different way. How anxious should my viewers be this morning?
Well, the JTAC level remains at substantial.
What does that mean?
Sorry, forgive me. The JTAC is the Joint Terrorism Analysis Centre, and they set the threat level for the United Kingdom. They're professionals. They're not politicians. They're not doing it for a hit. They're doing it because of what they really see, according to the intelligence, according to the policing, that information that is feeding in. And they've set it at substantial, and they keep it under review constantly. Substantial means that there is, of course, the possibility of an incident, as there is much of the time, sadly. But the reality is there isn't an imminent likelihood at the moment. Now, that can change, of course, and the police and the intelligence services keep this under review constantly.
What's the Prime Minister hope to achieve?
Well, the Prime Minister is out, as you know, he's just landed in Israel, and he and the Foreign Secretary are out in the region to do two things. The first, of course, is to demonstrate our support for Israel at this moment of extraordinary trauma for a country that has just suffered 1,000 deaths in southern Israel, but also to work on the release of those hostages who are still being held in Gaza and support to the Palestinians in Gaza as well. As you know, the Prime Minister has committed an extra £10 million to supporting the emergency needs of Palestinian civilians today, and has been working with the Foreign Secretary to help get the Rafah crossing open, which President Biden was very involved in, which of course requires the agreement of the Egyptian government as well.
I'll come to that, but just to talk, first of all, if I may, about what else he might do. Could he be pushing for a ceasefire?
I'm sure he's working for a peaceful solution. I'm sure that's exactly what he's doing.
OK. And as far as the Rafah crossing is concerned, any idea when that might open? Well,
we're hoping very much in coming days. Now, I don't want to put a timeline on it because there are issues, there are logistical issues, including with the road network and with the infrastructure just to get trucks through, which may need improvement. So I hope it'll be...
Potholes even in Egypt, I believe.
So.
And what will happen when it does open? What are traffic both ways?
So the idea is to get emergency aid in, and we're trying to get British citizens out as well.
How are we doing with that?
Well, at the moment, we're still in talks, and that requires the agreement of the Egyptian government, of course, because they'd be going into Egypt. And so we're having these conversations with a wider community to make sure that we can support those British citizens who want to leave.
Al Arabi Hospital, what does the British government think happened?
Well, first of all, that is an extraordinary human tragedy. I know that you will have seen the images that were broadcast across social media and across the world. And I'm not going to rush to speculation. I've been speaking to our intelligence services over the last 48 hours to try and find out exactly what's happened. Until we're absolutely certain, we're not going to be saying anything. Because we've seen, sadly, what speculative reporting has led to in recent days. We've seen in social media people rushing to judgment, and we've seen people...
not on this channel.
Indeed not, but we've seen regular individuals who have rushed to judgment, and some of that speed, as it were, that rush to headlines, the carelessness, has meant that there has been a genuine cost to it. And some of that cost has been because the Arab leaders who were going to engage in talks with President Biden pulled out. We've seen a synagogue, I know you were reporting it earlier, a synagogue was burnt in Tunisia. And sadly, we've seen increasing division and tension in the United Kingdom as well.
It's looking increasingly likely that it was a Hamas misfire.
Well, you're not going to expect me to engage in speculation for all the reasons I just set out, but I'm sure we'll be able to update as soon as we have greater information.
It's not particularly speculation. We have done our own work on that, as others have as well. You have worked... you have been a part of the army in your previous career. You've been involved, I'm sure, with hand-to-hand combat. What's it going to be like in Gaza if there is a ground invasion?
Well, look, the reality is fighting in built-up areas is extremely difficult. you get disorientated extremely quickly. It's very hard to know where your friends are, let alone where the enemy is. And it's an extremely difficult situation. That's why I would urge for all sides to, if we can find a peaceful solution, if we can find a way that protects Israel's right to self-defense and natural requirement to protect itself against these terrorists and Hamas, with the ability to protect Palestinian civilians, and that would be the best solution for everybody. But the reality is that the situation in Gaza is going to be hugely difficult. You've not only got the buildings above ground, but the tunnels below. It's going to be very, very hard.
Wiping out Hamas is what the Israeli government has said its mission is. Is that something the British government supports?
Well, it's quite clear
Totally.
that Hamas are not a partner for peace. They haven't been for years. Since they emerged in the 1980s, they've been supported in various different ways they have been supporting in various different ways extremist movements, and they have recently been supported by the Iranian government, whose specific constitution actually includes the destruction of the State of Israel as part of the elements of it. And Hamas keeps repeating vile anti-Semitic tropes, including various blood libels and calls for the destruction of the Jewish people, not just the Jewish state.
Should it be eliminated completely?
Well, it's quite clear they're not a partner for peace, and I would love to see a world without Hamas in it.
Let me ask you briefly before I let you go, a story that was around over the weekend, but being a former soldier, you probably have a view about a stage being erected next to the cenotaph. I had lunch with a senior army official yesterday. He was outraged.
Yeah, and he's right. It's disgraceful. Look, I mean, to many of us, the cenotaph is sacred ground. I mean, there's a reason it matters so much to our national consciousness. It's not just a memory of wars past, where many of our grandparents or great uncles or whatever fought in the First and Second World Wars. But for many of us, it's a very living memory to our friends we lost in Iraq and Afghanistan, or indeed in other conflicts around the world. So, frankly, the fact that there is a stage there is absolutely outrageous. I'm told that the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign didn't even ask Westminster Council for permission to put it up, and I'll be doing everything that I can and making sure that this is not allowed to happen again.
Minister, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.